Whispers of the Crimson Tent Chapter 1. The posters. When the first poster appeared in Greystone Hollow, no one knew where it came from. It was a place you might drive through and forget an hour later, a withering town pinned between dense woods and long-forgotten train tracks. Folks there didn't get much excitement, so the sudden emergence of a brightly colored poster on the side of Murphy's General Store caught everyone's eye. In bold, curling letters, it read, "Cirque du Sang, one night only. Dare you enter the Crimson Tent? At the Hollow Fields, dusk till the devil's hour." Below the text was a drawing of a twisted circus tent, striped red and black, looming larger than any structure in town. Surrounding it were grotesque caricatures of clowns and animals, some with too many teeth, others with no eyes at all. A ringmaster stood in front, grinning too wide for his face, bowing with a top hat in hand. Old Mrs. Cradle was the first to tear one down. She claimed it reeked of sulfur and ill omens, her gnarled hands trembling as she yanked it from the wood. But by morning, 3 more had taken its place. They appeared overnight, on doors, on trees, even on the chapel's wooden cross. People assumed it was a prank. Teenagers, maybe. But no one saw who put them up. And still, curiosity crept in. By Wednesday, word had spread beyond Greystone. People from neighboring towns began arriving. A traveling circus had never come this far into the holler. It seemed impossible that something so large could just show up. But as dusk settled on Friday, the Hollow Fields, usually nothing more than a flat patch of forgotten farmland, transformed. The Crimson Tent stood waiting. It hadn't been there that morning. That much, everyone swore to. But by sundown, it towered against the dusk like a wound split open across the earth. It wasn't just a tent. It breathed. Some said the fabric pulsed with a rhythm, slow and deliberate, like lungs. Others noticed shadows behind the canvas, things that didn't move quite right. Still, the music started soon after, a haunting calliope tune that drifted into every ear, soft and insistent. People gathered. Drawn in by the sound, the lights, and that strange magnetic pull of something ancient cloaked in glitter and grease paint. Among the crowd were 6 strangers. Unconnected, unaware of what fate had bound them to the Cirque du Sang. They would be the only ones to make it out alive. Chapter 2, The 6-1. Corbin Hale, a washed-up stage magician, once famous, now haunted by a failed trick that killed his assistant on stage. He'd been drifting from town to town, performing for peanuts and nursing guilt like a favorite drink. 2. Lena Marsh, a runaway teenager with a knack for sneaking into places she didn't belong. She liked the way the world looked from rooftops. She trusted no one but her switchblade. 3. Officer Daniel Reese, a Greystone Hollow cop, skeptical and stiff-lipped, who thought the circus smelled like trouble from the start. 4. Evelyn Blake, a schoolteacher with a repressed past, drawn by a whisper she couldn't ignore, something from her dreams since she was a child. 5. Benny Rook, a junkie who'd once been a fire breather in a traveling act. He claimed to know the smell of hellfire, and this tent, he said, reeked of it. 6. Felix and Maribel, twins who never spoke to anyone but each other, always found holding hands. People said they were psychic. They said nothing at all. These 6 would enter the Crimson Tent before midnight. Only 6 would emerge when the sun rose. And not a single one would be whole. Chapter 3, The Crimson Tent. They were drawn to it for different reasons. Corbin Hale saw the swirling colors from his motel room window. Something about the tent's shape reminded him of an old vaudeville stage he once performed on. The whispering breeze that curled under his door spoke with his assistant's voice. Lena was simply curious. She'd lifted a candy apple from a vendor and was ducking between the stalls when she heard something, call her name. Reese came because there was a missing child report. Parents swore they'd just looked away for a second. The boy was last seen near the tent. Evelyn had followed a dream. She'd had it since she was 8. The same one, over and over, a tent, a man with no face, and her own reflection smiling with too many teeth. Benny was just looking to score. But as soon as he stepped onto the fairground dirt, the itching in his veins stopped. He thought that meant something. Maybe salvation. The twins didn't walk. They floated. At least, that's how it looked. The crowd was huge. Dancers on stilts swayed overhead, cloaked in shadow. Jugglers tossed knives that hissed through the air. A mime in a black cage moved like water, always shifting, never blinking. Then came the voice. Louder than the music. Clearer than the chatter. It rang through the cold air like a bell dipped in blood. Ladies and gentlemen. Beasts and monsters. Children of the night and sinners of the soul. Welcome to the Cirque du Sang. The tent's mouth opened wide, unzipping like a grin-splitting skin, and the crowd surged forward. The six were swept in with the tide. The flap closed behind them. It was warm inside. Wet. The walls glistened. The air smelled like copper and burnt sugar. Candles flickered, but their flames bent downward, defying logic. And at the center of it all stood the ringmaster. He was tall, too tall. Dressed in a coat that shimmered between crimson and black, like a beetle's shell. His hat was stitched from leather that still twitched. His face, well, it changed. Every time one of the six looked at him, he wore a different mask, a laughing clown, wolf, a burning doll. But beneath them all, two red eyes glowed like coals. He welcomed them. Tonight, he said, is your night. A private performance. Custom tailored. He bowed low. The crimson tent shows what lies within. Not your dreams, your truths. And then the floor split open. Chapter 4. The spiral of stages. The floor yawned wide beneath the six, a spiraling chute of velvet and teeth. They fell, not screaming, not flailing, just suspended, as if gravity had been replaced by memory. Each one landed on their feet. Not together. Not even in the same space. The crimson tent had split them, separate stages, separate truths, tailored horrors wrapped in grease paint and sawdust. Corbin Hale, the Hall of Broken Mirrors. The magician stood inside a twisting corridor of mirrors, endless and intercut. At first, he only saw himself, old, slouched, defeated. But as he walked deeper, the reflections changed. He saw himself younger, on stage, applauding crowds. Then, the night of the accident. He watched it a dozen ways, his assistant Maria stepping into the vanishing box, the blade trick gone wrong, the shriek, the silence. Every mirror played a different version. In some, she screamed forever. In one, she opened the door from the box and laughed, but her skin peeled off in sheets like wrapping paper. Corbin backed away. Do you want to see the truth, Corbin? Came the voice, warped by glass. The trick was never the danger. You were. The mirrors cracked, and from them stepped hundreds of Maria replicas, bloody, eyeless, smiling. Corbin screamed as they rushed him, and the mirror world shattered into the next act. Lena Marsh, the endless funhouse. Lena didn't scare easily. But this place, this wasn't a normal funhouse. The hallways kept shifting, mirrors turning into flesh, walls breathing like lungs. Laughter echoed through vents, high-pitched and wet. Every few feet, she passed carnival posters with her own face on them, wanted. Murderous. Monster. She knew it wasn't a lie. She had killed someone. A foster father with wandering hands. She hadn't meant to. Not at first. But the funhouse knew. It whispered his voice from the walls. Lena, come here. Sit on my lap. She plunged her blade into a canvas wall, and it bled. A carousel began turning in the next room, horses twitching, distorted, foam at their mouths. One had a human face. Another wore her mother's. She ran. But her footsteps slapped against what felt like a giant tongue. And still the laughter followed. Officer Reese, the cop's trial. Reese found himself in a courtroom made of bones. The judge wore a blindfold. The jury had no mouths. The prosecutor, his dead partner, riddled with bullet holes. Officer Daniel Reese, the corpse said, voice echoing like a cave. How do you plead to the crime of silence? The floor was soaked in blood. Reese's badge was on the judge's gavel. He didn't understand at first. Then the slideshow began, faces of the people he'd ignored. Reports he'd buried. Kids he hadn't believed. The courtroom became a holding cell. Bars of bone. A crying child in the corner. His own daughter. He reached for her, but she turned, face a skull, eyes hollow. She mouthed, "Why didn't you stop him?" The walls folded in like jaws. Evelyn Blake, the ring of teeth. Evelyn stood beneath the spotlight. She was a child again, 8 years old, in a frilly dress. Her parents applauded from the front row, grinning wide, too wide. Behind them, shadows danced with knives. Then the spotlight turned red. Her parents froze, smiles split down the middle, blood pouring from their mouths. A clown stepped from behind the curtain, faceless, just a shifting smear of color. It offered her a hand. "Dance for them," it said. "Like you used to." She tried to run, but her legs moved in rhythm, trained, rehearsed. Her body betrayed her. The stage lights burned hotter. Every time she blinked, her parents decomposed a little more. Maggots wriggled from their eye sockets, clapping in unison. And her own mouth, when she opened it to scream, was filled with teeth that weren't hers. Benny Rook, the fire eater's confession. Benny stood in a ring of flame. The audience was made of wax figures, melting, burning, screaming without voices. He was back in the tent where he'd first tried to perform sober. The fire didn't listen that time. It had turned on him, jumped from his breath to the drapes, to the crowd, to the animals. 17 dead. He told himself it was an accident. But now the fire whispered, "You were high, Benny. You always were." The flames moved like dancers, curling toward him. They formed a woman's face, a woman he'd burned alive. She kissed him with lips of ash. The ringmaster's voice drifted in from above, "Confession cleanses the soul, but pain preserves it." The fire swirled around Benny. He screamed, and it swallowed him whole. The twins, the marionette gallery. Felix and Maribel wandered a room strung with puppets. Each one wore a face from their past, people they'd seen die. People they'd known would die. Being psychic didn't mean control. It meant helplessness. The puppets began to twitch. They danced without strings. Blood dripped from their wooden mouths. A giant hand descended from the ceiling, skeletal, jointed, clutching a pair of scissors. "Snip, snip," it said in a cracked voice. "Cut the thread, and you become real." The twins spoke their only words. In perfect harmony, they whispered, "Not yet." And the room exploded into silence. Chapter 5, The Crimson Performance. All 6 reappeared in the main ring. Bruised, bloodied, trembling. The audience now was them, their doppelgangers from the mirror worlds. Every seat filled with screaming, crying, laughing versions of themselves. The ringmaster stood center stage. He bowed. "You faced the first act. The truths within. The pain you hide. But now," he clapped twice, "you must perform." A curtain lifted. Behind it was a massive organ, twisted with horns, pipes, and entrails. "To leave the tent, you must play your symphony," he said. "All of you. Together. One wrong note, and we begin again. Forever." Benny stumbled to the keys first. His fingers were burned, blistered, but the moment he touched the organ, it sighed like a satisfied beast. Evelyn took the pedals. Corbin manned the stops. Reese, the chords. The twins placed their hands over the others, guiding them. And Lena, blade in hand, sliced her palm and let blood pour over the keys. The organ sang. Not music. Not melody. But memory. The tent filled with the sounds of their past, cries, lies, screams, confessions. Every note peeled a layer off the tent walls, revealing what lay beyond. They saw the true shape of the crimson tent. It was not made of fabric. It was skin. The poles were bones. The air, a lung. The tent was alive. An ancient beast, feeding off guilt and pain and performance. The ringmaster was its heart. And he was hungry. Chapter 6, the final act. We can't let it end here, Corbin said. We have to kill it. How do you kill a memory? Evelyn asked, weeping. With truth, whispered the twins. They turned to the ringmaster. You're not real, Felix said. You're ours, Maribel added. And together, they stepped forward. The ringmaster hissed, dropping his mask. Underneath was every face they'd ever feared, swirling, shifting, screaming. He lunged. But Lena met him with her blade. Corbin cast an illusion, hiding them. Reese shot at the tent ceiling. Benny breathed flame onto the organ. The tent howled. Its skin split. Evelyn struck the final note. The tent collapsed. Chapter 7, Mourning. Only the 6 remained. Standing in the flattened grass of hollow fields. No tent. No music. No sign that anything had ever been there. Just blood on their hands. Scars on their souls. And the knowledge they'd never truly left. Because once you enter the Cirque du Sang, part of you stays. Forever. Chapter 8, Survivors. They stood in the field for a long time after dawn broke. No one spoke at first. The sky overhead was gray, not stormy, but colorless, flat, as if the world itself was stunned into quiet. Corbin was the first to move. He reached down to his chest, half expecting to feel a magician's cape or a wand. But there was only blood, dried and crusted into the lines of his shirt. Reese held his badge in his hand. It looked warped now, as if the metal itself had aged decades overnight. The name etched into it had changed. Daniel Reese was now Daniel Ruse. He blinked at it. This isn't mine, he muttered. Benny lay on his side, whispering a prayer to no god anyone had ever heard of. His lips moved, but the words didn't come from his mouth. They came from beneath the soil. Evelyn stared at the space where the tent had been. Do you hear that? She asked. What? Corbin replied. The music. It's still playing. Just under the surface. Lena was already walking. She didn't wait. Her hands still bled, and she didn't care. The twins followed her like ghosts. They didn't speak again until they reached town. Chapter 9, Town of Shadows. Greystone Hollow was wrong. At first glance, everything looked unchanged. Same buildings, same trees. Same sagging telephone wires and peeling paint. But the colors were muted, like an old photograph left out in the rain. And the people? They were too still. A man walked past without blinking. A woman carried a baby that didn't move. A dog stood frozen mid-bark. Benny reached out to touch a lamppost, and recoiled as it squirmed under his fingers. Time's broken, Felix whispered. Maribel nodded. We never really left. We're in between. In between what? Reese asked. The twins said nothing. They didn't have to. Because above them, in the pale sky, the faint shape of the crimson tent reappeared. Upside down. Floating, distant, like a jellyfish drifting just beyond the veil of reality. It was watching. And the ringmaster's voice echoed faintly, though none of them saw him, the show never ends. It just changes acts. Chapter 10, The Carnival Inheritance. That night, each of the 6 received a dream. Not a normal dream, no. These were scripted, choreographed performances. Corbin Hale's dream, he was back on stage, but this time everyone in the audience was him. 1,000 Corbins, all clapping and laughing, their mouths wide and filled with teeth shaped like tickets. The curtain rose. Maria stepped out. But she wasn't Maria anymore. She was made of sawdust and string, and when she turned, her eyes were empty sockets. "Your turn to disappear," she said. He stepped into the vanishing box. The lid shut. He woke screaming. Lena Marsh's dream, she was the star of the show. Spotlight on her. Applause. They called her the Dagger Girl. A stagehand handed her a knife, and another, and another. One by one, she threw them. Each landed in someone she had trusted. Foster parents. Teachers. Friends. Each one laughed as they died. And then, the last blade hovered in her hand, aimed at her own chest. "Only one left," the voice said. She dropped it before it could pierce. But her shadow picked it up. Daniel Reese's dream, he stood in a maze of hallways, all police stations, interrogation rooms, cells. His footsteps echoed endlessly. He chased a sound, a child crying. He found the cell. His daughter was inside. She turned, face blank, and whispered, "You let him walk. Remember? You said there wasn't enough." Behind her, the ringmaster's face bloomed like a rose made of flesh and knives. Reese fired his gun. The bullet never landed. Evelyn Blake's dream, she taught a classroom of dolls. Each one wore a porcelain mask. Each one whispered her name backwards. The chalkboard behind her read, "Lesson, How to Forget What Never Left." The door opened. Every student turned their head in perfect, bone-snapping unison. The ringmaster walked in. "You're late," she said. He bowed. She handed him the chalk. He drew a door. Benny Rook's dream, he was inside the fire. Not near it. Inside it. It didn't burn. It showed. Every face he'd ever harmed. Every lie. Every fix. Every time he said, "I'll stop tomorrow." They stood in a circle around him, dripping wax and sorrow. One by one, they opened their mouths and screamed fire into him. And at the center stood the ringmaster. Smiling. Feeding. The twins' dream, they shared one. They were puppets now. Strung together by the same thread. The ringmaster danced with them in a ballroom made of stars, time rewinding every few seconds. A song played backwards in a language that didn't exist. And then, a mirror. Inside it, 2 children. Not twins. Not them. But who they would have been, had they never been born in the Crimson Tent's shadow. The mirror shattered. And they woke. Chapter 11, The Curse Spreads. Greystone Hollow didn't survive the week. By Friday, the town had vanished. Literally, gone. A field of grass where once there were houses. Only the 6 remembered. But they weren't 6 anymore. They were fragments. Shadows of themselves. Marked. They tried to leave separately. Corbin hitched a ride to another state. But every time he looked out the window, he saw the Crimson Tent reflected in the rearview mirror. Evelyn moved into a new apartment in a city hours away, yet her mail kept arriving with the return address, Cirque du Sang, everywhere and always. Reese tried to turn himself in. But when he entered the station, no one could see him. He no longer existed in police databases. Benny overdosed. Or tried to. But when he woke up, the EMTs had clown makeup. They didn't say a word. Just handed him a balloon and left. Lena started carving marks into her arms, not out of self-harm, but to record dates, symbols, a language the tent had taught her. The twins? They waited. Because they knew Act 2 was coming. Chapter 12, the second tent. 6 months later, a new poster appeared. This time, in your town. No one knew where it came from. It just was. Red and black. Same smiling ringmaster. Same challenge. Cirque du Sang, one night only. Dare you enter the Crimson Tent? At the abandoned mall parking lot. Dusk till the devil's hour. You walk past it every day. Maybe you think it's a joke. A prank. A bit of guerrilla art. But tonight, when you go home, you'll hear something. A soft tune. A calliope playing far off in the dark. And if you follow it, if you step into the lot and see that strange tent, somehow bigger on the inside than it looks, well, welcome to the show. The curtain's rising. And the audience is hungry. Chapter 13, The New Town, Davenport, Illinois. Population, 13,202. A town so normal it practically apologized for existing. Every lawn mowed, every mailbox standing straight. The biggest excitement was a new fast food chain that opened last month. Until the posters arrived. They weren't delivered. They appeared. Stapled to telephone poles, pasted over stop signs, slipped under windshields. The Crimson Tent returns. Cirque du Sang, one night only, where the world ends and the soul begins. Step right up. A few locals laughed. Teenagers dared each other to go. Someone started a Facebook group, #Crimson Challenge. The tent materialized on the edge of the fairgrounds at dusk. Blood-red canvas. Twisting flags. A calliope played music backward, its steam rising like breath in winter air. That night, 23 people entered. Only 6 came out. Chapter 14. Reunion. They felt it the moment it happened. Across the country, Corbin, Evelyn, Reese, Benny, Lena, and the twins froze in place, wherever they were. As if some unseen cord inside them had snapped taut. The Crimson Tent was awake again. It had taken 23 souls. It was feeding. But something had changed. This wasn't like before. It wasn't just repeating. It was evolving. Corbin's tarot deck bled when he touched it. Evelyn's shadows stretched in the wrong direction. Reese's gun would no longer fire, no matter the bullets. Lena's blade sang when it tasted blood, actual music. And the twins? They'd begun to speak in synchronicity, always, as if possessed by one mind. They didn't have to call each other. They knew where to go. Chapter 15, The Museum of Forgotten Acts. Davenport survivors, 6 of them, were found wandering in a catatonic state the next morning. Eyes wide. Mouth sewn shut with invisible thread. One boy kept miming juggling. A woman laughed every time someone blinked. But they all said the same thing when the stitches dissolved. Just one word, encore. The original 6 arrived that night. The tent was bigger than before. 3 peaks instead of 1. Symbols in black stitched along the canvas, sigils of despair, hunger, and performance. They didn't hesitate. They entered. Inside, everything was different. No audience. No ringmaster. Just a hallway lined with doors. Each labeled with their names. Chapter 16, Corbin's Room, The Trick That Killed God. Corbin stepped into a chamber of crimson velvet and shadows. A floating stage hovered in the center. He was no longer Corbin. He was the Great Hale, supreme illusionist, master of mirrors and minds. The crowd, faceless, cheered. Cards danced in the air. Rabbits screamed as they were pulled from hats. Saws sang as they cut through beautiful assistants. But this time, Corbin wasn't the performer. He was the trick. The spotlight pinned him. The crowd began to chant. Vanish. 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 The air around him shimmered. Reality peeled like paint. And then he was gone. But his screams remained. Chapter 17, Evelyn's Room. The lesson never learned a classroom again. Blackboards, rows of chairs, silent students. Only now, the students were her. Dozens of Evelyns, each at a different age. 8. 14. 22. 30. All staring. All bleeding. A giant book thudded onto the desk. Its pages were stitched skin. Its ink was her nightmares. Lesson 1, Pain is Permanent. The students began to sing. A lullaby she didn't know but somehow remembered. The chalkboard cracked open like a mouth. A teacher, her father, crawled out. Not alive. Not dead. Just made of regret and bourbon. He pointed at her. She tried to scream. But her voice had turned to chalk. Chapter 18, Reese's Room. The mirror cell. He stood in front of a wall of mirrors. Each showed a different version of him. One proud. One corrupt. One crying. One holding a gun to his temple. Behind each version was a cell. Inside, someone he'd failed. A girl who overdosed. A woman beaten and never believed. A child who vanished. Each mirror shattered as he approached it. Each shard embedded in his skin. By the time he reached the last reflection, he no longer resembled a man. He was justice, mangled and bleeding. The final mirror showed the ringmaster wearing his face. Chapter 19, Benny's Room. The infinite circus. He walked into fire. Always fire. It was no longer punishment. It was home. But now, the circus animals were inside the flames, burning, yet alive. Bears screaming. Elephants on their knees. Clowns sobbing without faces. A ring of fire surrounded a mirror. He looked in. His reflection wasn't him. It was a child. 5 years old. Innocent. Laughing. And behind the child, an endless line of burnt corpses. The mirror cracked. He stepped through. And became ash. Chapter 20, Lena's Room. The Blade's decision. Her room was a theater of blood. Ropes tied to wrists. Hooks in skin. Every audience member was someone she had feared or killed in her dreams. Her blade hovered in the air. Whispering. Cut them. Cut them all. Or cut yourself. That's how this ends. She refused. The blade turned on her. Slashed her eyes. Her lips. Her name from her memory. But she didn't scream. Instead, she reached into her own chest. Pulled out her heart. And carved a door into the wall with its final beat. Chapter 21, The Twins' Room. The puppet god Felix and Maribel entered hand in hand. One mind. One heartbeat. The room was endless black, strings falling from the sky. They were puppets again. But so was the ringmaster. He dangled above them, massive, twitching, empty-eyed. His strings led upward into something greater. A god? A beast? The tent itself? The twins spoke in unison, "You were never the master." And they reached up, severed his strings. He fell. And the world shook. Chapter 22, The Return. They awoke outside the tent. Again. But this time, something was different. They remembered. All of it. And they weren't alone. The 23 from Davenport surrounded them, free, staring, changed. They could speak again. But what they said chilled the blood of all 6 survivors. It's not done. It never ends. The tent grows. The ringmaster returns. Again. And again. Corbin wept. Benny burned inside. Evelyn laughed until she bled. The twins looked at the sky, and whispered, "We have to destroy the stage." Chapter 23, The planet took months. Years, even. The tent moved town to town, feeding. But the 6 followed it. Hunted it. They learned its rhythm. How it opened. How it fed. And eventually, how it bled. Lena's blade became the key. Evelyn carried the map. Etched in memory, not ink. Benny harnessed the fire, now obedient, barely. Reese found the one bullet that could kill what wasn't alive. Corbin made the illusion that would trick the tent into believing it had already won. And the twins, they became the bait. They lured the ringmaster out. Into the real world. Chapter 24, The last show. The Crimson Tent opened in Detroit. 20,000 people went missing overnight. The 6 entered through the flame. Not to escape. To kill. They found the ringmaster at the center, swollen, massive, threads of reality tied around his fingers. He had become more than a man. A concept. A cancer. He opened his arms. "Welcome back," he said. "We're not here to perform," Corbin said. "Not today," said Reese. Evelyn tossed the book. Lena struck the stage with her blade. The twins sang. And Benny. Benny breathed the final fire. Chapter 25, Collapsed. The tent screamed. Tore itself apart. Its fabric unraveled into screams and memories. Every act, every death, every whisper, burned. The ringmaster begged. Offered them roles. Immortality. Escape. But the 6 stood firm. They had lost too much. The curtain fell. And this time, it stayed down. Epilogue. The audience remembers. You're probably wondering why this story exists at all. If they destroyed the tent. If the horror ended. Why the words remain. Why you can still hear the music sometimes, in dreams. Why the posters appear in places they shouldn't. Here's the truth: they killed the ringmaster. They burned the Crimson Tent. But the audience? That's you. And as long as you remember the story, the show must go on.